right, welcome back. This is the third in the Sew and Sell series. And today we are going to be talking about product production, how you're setting up your systems so that you can be more efficient and then you can either make more for your time or you can be more competitive with your pricing or both. So if you are ready to dive into that, let's get going. One of the things that I talk about in my Sew and Sell product planner PDF ebook that you can get on my Etsy shop is to batch produce things in order to get your time and labor costs down. So I'm going to put my needle where my mouth is, and we are going to do this. We are going to make one key fob, or I'm going to make one key fob and time exactly how long it takes. And then I'm going to make 10 using the batch processing, which I like to call channeling Henry Ford, because he back in 1913 was the first person to kind of make conveyor belts and systematize the production of cars. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the timer on my phone to time myself. I'm not going to have you be here with me in real time since this isn't live. I think it would get a little bit boring, but I will keep video of my timer going so that you can see exactly how long it is taking me. I'm not going to cheat. If it takes me the same amount of time to do 10 as it does to do one, so be it. But I really think it is going to be a lot faster. So let's see what happens. I just set the stopwatch, but because I'm using the phone right now, I can't show you that. First thing we're going to do is gather supplies. So I'm going to be using this fabric, and then I have my Pellon Fusible fleece, which means it has a fusible material on the one side that adheres to the fabric when we iron it. Rotary cutter, bucket of Key Fob hardware, and my pliers. We'll need that towards the end. So whether you're doing one thing or you're doing 10 things, you have to get the same materials out. First thing I need to do is iron this. Now I need one piece of fabric that is 3.5 inches wide, 10 inches long. All right, I'm trying to go at a normal pace and not be too rushed. I don't want to look like I'm doing supermarket sweeps because I know that in general, if I was making a bunch of things to sew and sell, you couldn't keep up that super fast pace, right? So you want to go at a normal pace. Now I'm going to grab my fleece. I only have this big stuff by the yard. I need it to be 2 inches wide by 10 inches. And I'll cut that whole strip 2 inches because then we can use that when we're doing our next bigger batch. If you're going to go slightly over or slightly under, you want to go slightly under because we don't want the fleece to hang off of our fabric. And I'm just going to save that for when we're doing more at a time. Now we're going to put this face down. I'm going to put the fleece centered on the fabric, making sure that the scratchy side is down, that is the fusible side. And then I'm going to fold each side over and press. That will fold the fabric and also fuse the fleece to the fabric. I'm going to use that to help absorb the heat and help really press that down. Now I'm going to fold it in half, matching these long edges, and press again. Okay, now just to keep these edges together, I'm just going to put 2 little clips. So now that our fabric is ready, it is time to move to the sewing machine. All right, I'm going to need to change my thread so that it is the color that I want for this one key fob. Now we're going to sew down this side where it is matched together to close that up. Then across the end, up this side, and down the middle. And I'm putting a little leader fabric back there so that it is going to move better. I'm going to pull up my bobbin thread. Trying not to take too much time explaining this so that I'm not messing with the timing of this process. Now you could leave it just like that, just sewn on the 2 sides. I don't know, I always like to do down the center too. "12 minutes to make one all by itself. Now let's mass produce and make 10 and see what happens." All right, I got the one key fob made with the sunflowers, and now I'm going to make 10 out of these. I'm going to turn this off so we can turn the timer back on, and we're going to see how long it takes to batch create 10 key fobs. Will it be faster than the 12 minutes it took me to make one? I'm not going to time this part because I do want to explain this. These are the fabric cut charts that are in this Sew and Sell project planner that you can get in my Etsy shop. And what I did was I basically made the equivalent of graph paper. Each of these is a 1/4 inch, so if you wanted to use it with regular graph paper, you could. And I made them the size of common cuts of fabric. And what I did was I went through and using a 1 inch per square, I drew the 3.5 by 10 pieces. So in 1/3 of a yard, we can get 11 pieces. From a fat quarter, you can cut 10. So it'd be perfect for this experiment that we're doing. So this is a great way to figure out how many cuts you can get out of different amounts of fabric. Using solid or non-directional fabric is going to be easier because you can position these in both directions. Using directional, you want to make sure you're always parallel to the selvage. We started at 36, we're basically at 40. It took us basically 40 minutes, including winding a bobbin, which, sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't during the process. So 40 divided by 10, these took 4 minutes each versus one, when we did it individually, took 12 minutes. So batch producing, I was right. It's actually saves you even more time than I expected. So that is how, when you're sewing and selling, you can save a lot of time, either increase your profits or decrease the price so you can be more competitive by sewing a lot of things at once. Let me know in the comments what you think. Have you tried this before? Are you going to be trying it? And let me know what else you want to know about sewing and selling. That was pretty crazy, right? I knew it was going to be faster, but I didn't have any idea it would be that much faster. And I also know that I did a pretty simple one, right? Just one piece of fabric, we cut it apart. But you can also use that system to do a little bit more complicated key fobs. We're just going to stick with the key fobs. So this is fabric that I have sewn together. This is directional fabric. And if I cut it into strips on the one side of the key fob, those sunflowers would all be upside down. So instead, I cut skinnier strips, so half as wide, and then sewed them together. So you'll see the sunflowers are going this way here, and they're going the opposite way here. So then when it curves and becomes the key fob, it's always going to be right side up. So you can make long strips like this and then cut them into the width that you need to make a key fob. So that's one example of an up level, a little bit more complicated, just because it's directional fabric. Now here's another one that I have pre-made. This has both directional fabric, so that's a strip and that's a strip, and also an accent fabric on the end. So that's just going to be even a little bit fancier. So you can make really long strip like that, and then you're going to cut them into individual strips to make the key fob. That's one of those things that takes a teeny bit longer for you, but you can then maybe get a better price, or you're more likely to sell yours versus somebody that just does a plain blue key fob. Another thing that you can do is you can take your key fobs this far, right? Get it all ready. All you need to do is fold it in half and put the hardware on, but you can keep them like this so you can offer personalization. This would be if you were personalizing by either putting heat transfer vinyl on there, and you're going to make it specifically for what the person asks for. So you can get all of these ready to go. So you're not going to have to sew. You're just going to put that personalization on there and add the Key Fob hardware. If you were doing a live event, you could even do this live. And people like that. They like to see you, the artist, at work. So you could have like these in a cute container, and people could come and they could pick their fabric. And then they could maybe pick the little charm that they want to put on there, and you just stitch that on there really quickly, or put it on with grommets, put the key fob on there, and then it makes it a little bit more special because they feel like they've seen the process, they've been part of the process. These are just some ideas to get you thinking about different ways to play with systems. So how do you do this for yourself? The first thing to do is, once you've decided what you want to make, so in my case it was key fobs, you look at every step. When and where do I move? So with the key fobs, we started ironing. So I ironed the fabric. Then I moved to the workspace and I was cutting. I was cutting the fabric and I was cutting the fusible fleece. So that's kind of a two-step, but at the same workstation. Then I was ironing again. So that's another move, putting the fleece and ironing. Then you're sewing, and then you're attaching the Key Fob hardware. So that would be your system, and you would do each of those steps like I just did, or like I just showed you in super fast forward, at the same time, instead of going through the whole process once, then going through it twice, then going through it 3 times. If you prefer to just make one thing from start to finish and not have to do this kind of batch processing, then you should probably come up with things to make that are going to sell for a little bit of a higher price point where your time doesn't matter as much as it does in more of an impulse purchase like a key fob. Hopefully that makes sense. So the product production phase is basically focusing on your time, creating systems that are going to save you time so that you can be more productive. You can make more of whatever you're doing by batching it, as we just talked about. So then you can go back and look at your pricing and say, okay, well, my labor rate, if you're looking at your hourly rate or somebody else's, has gone down significantly by not making these things one at a time. So how do I want that to impact my price? Do you want it to impact your price, or do you want it to impact your profit and your bottom line, how much you're making for what you're doing? So this topic is also one of the things covered in my Sew and Sell Project Planner ebook that you can get on Etsy. It has everything and a little bit deeper for videos 1, 2, and 3. I hope you have enjoyed this introduction to sewing and selling, get lots of ideas, and that you start to implement it. I would love to hear back what you're trying, what's working, what's not working, where you have questions. So be sure to leave comments. You can let me know. You can ask more questions. I will be doing more videos on this topic. And you can find lots of sewing and quilting tutorials on my YouTube channel as well that can give you more things that you can sew and sell. Wishing you much success in the thinking and the sewing and selling.